let's just get started, shall we?
Go for it.
So, hello everyone. Today I'm here with Jack from Epilepsy Australia, or Action Australia, my apologies. You're actually the first person to join us for Project Educate and Advocate. So welcome.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Alrighty, so I'm so excited to have you and just for you to tell us all about Epilepsy Action Australia and what you guys do for the community and teach me because I really want to learn more about everything. So tell me about what you guys do. What do you do?
Hey, fair enough. Awesome to hear that you want to learn. I personally believe that education is the way to complete understanding for everybody and empathy around the world, but specifically with Epilepsy Action Australia, they strive for achieving the optimal outcomes for those living with epilepsy. Now, the organisation does this by offering information about and services needed by those living with epilepsy and their support network. So think family, friends, that sort of thing. They also educate and train the community at large about epilepsy, and they raise public awareness to combat the stigma around epilepsy, and supports research into new interventions and treatments to improve and save the lives of epileptics.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so to take even further, it's while I was onboarding onto this, I did find out the story as well, because it all began when a mother by the name of Marie Tressler was forced to place her 9-year-old daughter in a psychiatric hospital, as that was the only treatment available in the 1950s for anyone with epilepsy at that time.
Yeah.
Historically hasn't been great treatments,
No.
particularly mental stuff. And unfortunately, her daughter came out a broken child, as she put it, and she vowed that no one else should suffer what she had to. And in 1952, she founded the Epileptic Welfare Association, which was a predecessor organisation to what ultimately became Epilepsy Action Australia, which we know today. And from those early pioneers of the association to the modern Epilepsy Action Australia, a culture of unwavering support exists for countless Australian individuals and families living with epilepsy.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah, so the backstory is pretty incredible. I suppose it's one, and it's exactly what your program's all about, educating and understanding all, as I said before, understanding is the way to true empathy and everyone being accepted.
Well, exactly. So me as a teacher, as a dance teacher, I want to learn more, not only for myself and know what to do with these types of situations, but just know, just have common, just sense about what to do, how to treat it. I want to know how I can help as a teacher with therapies and things like that, and how I want to learn from you guys and teach me about anything that I can do to help, really. I 100% agree education is the best way to, obviously to learn, but, just to gain information in general, 100% is the best way. And that's a really cool story. That's a really good story.
Yeah. So, again, negative into a positive,
yeah.
I suppose. It sucks
I guess
sometimes.
That's always the way with anything, really. But yeah,
sometimes the only positive to come out of a situation is the learnings you can pass on to other people, and clearly that's a situation of that.
I agree. I feel like there's always been this kind of stigma around epilepsy, especially with seizures. What types of things do you wish people knew about epilepsy?
Epilepsy is more than just seizures.
Yes.
Epilepsy can have, go around with that whole stigma. It can have significant social and psychological impacts and often affects independence, learning, employment opportunities, relationships, mental health, and finally a quality of life, obviously all leading to degradation of that.
Yeah.
Now, people with epilepsy often face social stigma, discrimination and exclusion. A fundamental part of reducing this stigma is to raise public and professional awareness by campaigns such as the Stars Within is running. The seizures associated with epilepsy actually come in many, many, many forms, and I can see how, if you're not familiar with what a seizure looks like, I understand how you might mistake it for another condition, because if everyone thinks of a seizure and epilepsy, they think of bam, shaking the ground, that sort of thing. It's actually a lot more than that, and it can be just involuntarily, involuntary movements that, like for me coming in, I initially thought, to me that I think Tourette's when I think involuntary movements or people making sounds,
Right.
but that's actually one form of seizure. But undertaking some training with Epilepsy Action Australia, again, onboarding myself as a speaker for them, the variety of seizures that actually exist broadly are grouped as focal onset, which affect, a small region of the brain, and they're the ones that give you those small movements. Generalized onset, which affect the entire brain, so that is normally falls in the generalized seizure. And they have also unknown onset seizures, which, as the name suggests, it's just like they happen. We're not 100% sure why. So I can only imagine if you fall in the last category, how terrifying it must be.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, so whilst most people think of someone falling to the ground, failing, and being non-responsive as epilepsy, there are other types that cause brief lapses of attention, confusion, or unusual behaviour. Just a quick example from some of the stuff that I've seen about it is, if you know what, do you know what a 1,000-yard stare is? How someone will just vague out and just be like,
oh, is this absent seizures?
Correct. So absent seizures, that can be a part of that. They might have that could be one seizure that they're currently having, as well as they might have the just like repeatedly lick their lips, for example. If they just sit there and just absent seizure, like vague out.
Yeah.
They're actually having a seizure. So that's also covered under epilepsy as well. Personally, as I'm a big supporter of the cause, especially because I'm an epilepsy sufferer myself. I experienced general onset seizures, having a number of absent seizures doing exactly that 1,000-yard stare from about 2014 up to the present. And this is one of the things, even talking to medical professionals, I got diagnosed as having panic attacks before ultimately I suffered a whole body convulsive seizure in late 2019. And then they finally said, okay, this is definitely epilepsy.
Yeah.
Initially when you have the first diagnosis, it's terrifying because it's just something that's wrong with your brain. Like if you break your leg, pretty straightforward. Just put a cast on it, whatever, 6 weeks off. Whereas when it's in your brain, it's a hell of a lot more terrifying. And, a quick Dr. Google for me found that a brain tumor was a possible cause. And considering I didn't really have any other normal risk factors, basically, it did weigh on my mind until I could rule out wholeheartedly that, yes, there was no lumps on the brain or anything. But fortunately for my case, medication seems to be working for me, and I haven't had any seizures since. And I suppose jumping back to, what do I wish that people knew? In addition to all that information, is I just wish that people knew that we can do the most of the things that everybody can do. Just some of us need a little help to ensure that epilepsy doesn't rule our lives, because it is completely controllable. And breaking down that stigma will really enable us to live our lives.
Yeah, 100%. Wow, you give me so much good information. I didn't even know how to bounce off of it. It's so good, but I understand completely. I know that when I was younger, I actually was diagnosed with epilepsy, but I was told that later on that it was literally just me fainting. So I didn't have epilepsy. It's very, very touch and go, the disability itself. So most people or most doctors will be like, you have it, but then be like, I'm not too sure. Well, that was my case anyways.
Yeah.
So I was diagnosed with absent seizures. So I did do that stare, and I just see spots and see different colors and be like,
oh wow, so you have the auras. I
had a lot of different colors and stuff. And this was when I was a lot younger. I used to have medication, and the medication actually didn't work for me. So it's really interesting to see how different people obviously they deal with the different things. But
and that's just right. Some people grow out of it, as it seems you have. Some people develop it in later life. I don't want to say there's no rhyme or reason, and 30% of people don't actually respond to medication, as it seems you didn't. Again, I'm very fortunate that I'm in the majority that do, but I can only imagine how terrifying it would be, specifically, at the prospect of losing your license on a prospect because of a medical condition, which means 6 months license, which Australia is a very car-oriented society. And especially if you're in rural or regional areas where they don't even have public transport, I can see, how that would make you even more of a hermit, not by your own choosing.
Yeah. Okay, so what training does Epilepsy Action Australia offer?
They offer a very broad swathe of training. I highly recommend pretty much anything. I did as part of my onboarding as a volunteer speaker the Epilepsy Essentials. It's actually free for children from kindergarten to year 6, and it's you'd have to check the website as to how much it actually costs for the adults. But a key priority for Epilepsy Action Australia is delivering the very best education and training nationwide to people with epilepsy, their families, caregivers, and the wider network of people involved with someone who has epilepsy, which includes, teachers, carers, and employers, right through to health workers, specialists, general practitioners, aged and disability workers, and nurses. So pretty much anyone they touch at any point in their daily lives while trying to manage that condition. They will also have and resources tailored for specific groups, such as the disability sector, Indigenous Australians, and specific age groups such as seniors, children, teenagers, and young adults. It's a mix of non-accredited and accredited courses, so you can undertake those that meet the Australian classification framework, should you or your group require. They also have a nurse or nurse educators located around the country, and they're also able to provide training via technology to anywhere in the country. So, benefits. Do you prefer face-to-face the most? Cool. See if there's a nurse there who can accommodate that. They're also able to provide training on site at your service or business. And, I suppose if you have a look online, and it's quite well signposted as to where training is on Epilepsy Action Australia. If you want to give them a call if nothing quite meets what you're looking for, contact 1300 37 4537 or email epilepsy@epilepsy.org.au. The team can tailor an individualised training package to suit you.
Out of curiosity, did you take the course for to understand yourself more, or just to see different sides of things?
Look, to be honest, again, as whenever anyone suffers a medical condition such as yourself, you get very interested on the specific cause for just your I suppose for me it was okay, well, what's the generalized seizure or tonic-clonic seizure look like, which is seizure as people normally know it. And then, so as part of this and as part of becoming an ambassador for Epilepsy Action Australia, it was a requirement to go through that training, and geez, it just completely blew my mind with how broad the the seizures can range from. And again, you might miss something and think it's something else. But, a lot of that training is that was a slideshow and a couple of video presentations. But if reading isn't your thing, they actually do have an National Epilepsy Helpline, which is available 9 to 5, 7 days a week in all Australian states and territories. The number for it is 1300 37 4537. And, it's a general repository, and, it's I don't know if anyone's had, and any of your listeners or viewers of this might have had kids, but have used probably a national healthline service or something like that, where, you get people who call you back and just can put your mind at ease then and there. I personally have a 10-month-old, and we've used the state helpline about what the hell do I do with my kids.
Yeah.
This National Epilepsy Helpline is exactly like that. I've just had a seizure. My son's just had a seizure. My friend has. What can we do? Give 1300 37 4537 a call. They'll be able to help guide you through that.
That is so awesome. That is really, really good.
Thank you. Yeah, and the last thing which I personally find, which if you do feel comfortable enough, and this is again why I'm very open about it, to break down that stigma, is ask an epileptic directly if you know one. Now, again, the stigma kind of begets that people are they don't necessarily let people know that they've got it. But by doing that, you're breaking down the stigma. Ask what it's like to live a day in the life of an epileptic. What extra things do they need to do to protect themselves? Like, for example, love surfing.
Wow.
If I didn't if medication didn't keep my epilepsy under control, as an epileptic, I think it's 17 to 19 more times higher to die of a drowning-related incident from that. So, I should always go with a friend. Now, should is probably the operative word there, and I probably don't as often as I should. But, what activities can I do outright? Pretty much everything. What do I need to really put a handbrake on? Some things like that. But you'd be surprised if you approach someone with just a bit of genuine curiosity to understand what their condition is and just how much they're willing to share. And self-proclaimed extrovert here, I'm more than happy to share, probably too much, but I guess you definitely understand the condition after that.
Yeah, exactly. So as a teacher, what should I be doing to help my students understand epilepsy, or how can I teach it in some sort of way? Break down that.
Yeah, I suppose how would you... I suppose understanding how common it is. Number one is, I'm a bit of a nerdy numbers guy, so epilepsy is actually more common than Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, MS, and muscular dystrophy combined. 800,000 Australians will develop epilepsy during their lifetime, and around 250,000 are living with it right now, 50% of whom the cause is unknown. Most of these 250,000, as I mentioned earlier, are successfully treated with medication, but 30% just don't respond to medications and have to go into some of the alternate treatments, a few of which are experimental. But the other thing would be, make people aware that if you see someone falling over on the street, like I can see how, you would see, someone's drugged up or someone's really drunk, and I've just walked past someone having a fit on the ground. So if you see someone moving strangely in the street, having lost control of their body, it may not be that fact that they're drunk or under the influence of drugs, but potentially having a seizure. Following on from that general awareness of epilepsy, epilepsy first aid treatment would also probably be a must teach. So if you observe someone you think is having a seizure, you should stay with the person, time the seizure, keep the person safe, protect them from injury, especially the head when they're doing fitting, roll the person onto their side after the seizure stops. But if you see vomit or food or something in the mouth, then immediately do that, and observe and monitor their breathing. When they come out, gently reassure them, hey, mate, look, I think you've had a seizure. I'm just going to stay with you until help arrives. Are you an epileptic? Start asking questions of them until they've recovered. And it's also probably a good idea to make sure that they have someone they can go home with. So, even if you pick up their phone, hey, can I just call whoever's under mum and let them know that you're here and that you probably need a lift. The things the things you shouldn't do is put anything in the person's mouth. Like, yes, they'll probably be like grinding, gnashing their teeth as part of the seizure, but that's obviously the worst thing you can do in case they take it in and obstructs an airway. Yep. Don't restrain the person. With the exception of the head, chuck a jumper or something under the head, just let them go, and it may cause them to become more agitated. Don't move them either unless they're in danger. So if they've done it on the street, then obviously pull them off onto the pavement. But, try not to move them as possible. And you should definitely call an ambulance if you're in any doubt. The person is visibly injured, so have they smacked their hand on something sharp that's caused a bleed? If they've got food, fluid or vomit in their mouth because they may have inhaled it. Definitely call an ambulance if the seizure's happened in water. The person has breathing difficulties after the seizure stops, or another seizure is quick to follow, or the seizures lasted longer than 5 minutes, or the person is non-responsive for more than 5 minutes after their seizure ends and they're basically unconscious. That's when you should call an ambulance. So just start at, if you see someone who's fallen over and you think, maybe this is a seizure, probably just sit there, check your phone. All right, it's been about 5 minutes. Maybe I'll call ambulance on them as well. just to make sure that they're okay, and just sit there for when they come around and make sure that they're okay.
Yeah. I love that you go into detail and tell us like exactly how we should do it, or just give us points, because I think it's so important that people know like it's okay just to walk up and be like, hey, are you okay? Like checking up on people. I feel like we don't do it as often as we should in society, but I feel like that's really important, and it's good for people to know, like, go up, say hi, let's just try and help you out here, and then just go about it. And it's not something to be embarrassed about. I feel like something like people with epilepsy, especially when I was younger and had it, I remember just being like, oh my god, what if something happens and I'm just in class and I'm staring at something and someone's like, why are you teasing? Like, I'll get teased on. And like, I feel like it needs to be taught more, and it's so important that people know, it's okay to be like, I'll help you, or I'll sit with you. And even if they did the smallest things, like grab your phone out, how long have they been staring at this wall for? Or like, even just making sure that they're supported. I feel like it's really important. So I really like how you go into it and be like, it's okay, just it's okay. And
it is, yeah, and that's right. Like it does suck a bit, like I remember going through high school. I like to think it wasn't that long ago, but I'm crow's feet and stuff now. But you just want to be normal, and something like epilepsy is not, unfortunately, normal. And 250,000, put it in percentage of what that is. I think that's about 1% of the population, so 1 in 100 people essentially have some form of epilepsy right now, with up to 800,000, so 3%, 3 in 100. If you think of your class size at school, there might be people who just have epilepsy who you don't know about, like nocturnal epilepsy is a thing. And when I've talked in other situations, people have come up after me like, yeah, I've got nocturnal epilepsy, and told me about that. And again, it's, just allowing people the opportunity to be like, wow, you've got something not normal about you, but it's cool not normal, if that makes sense, to be like, I guess celebrate diversity and the difference about each other in this world.
Well, being different is way better than being normal, like, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, definitely. Some of the commuters which get stuck next to me and give me the tiniest opening to talk to them on the train and tram on the way into work, maybe don't think so, but, it's cooler being not normal and sharing.
I agree. So how can stars within assist individuals with epilepsy? So is dance a form of therapy? Like how can I help?
Yeah, well, as far as I remember from reading up on it, there is something to do with physical therapy, is, I believe, it's in early research to determine the full efficacy of the treatment as an alternate form, like outside of if the drugs don't work for you. But ultimately, I guess, until until the jury's back on that, just treat us as normal people. As I said, like, ultimately it's what we are, just an individual who has our brain short circuit from time to time, causing us to do weird things, some of which, or the most noticeable of which, is falling down. Talking from my experience, it is terrifying waking up after a seizure, especially at first. And I just remember being very frightened, with 2 paramedics standing over me saying, Jack, are you okay? Tasting blood in my mouth because I bit myself. It is honestly terrifying. So make sure you give, also don't forget to give the appropriate first aid that I talked about before. And don't forget to reassure us as we come around, hey, Jack, everything's all good. You've just had I think you've had a seizure. Is there anyone we should call? I'm happy to be with you until we've got you sorted out. And I guess the final thing is, don't forget that epilepsy isn't a contagious disease. And if you help us out while we're having a seizure, the only thing you'll get is the awesome feeling of knowing you helped someone in need afterwards. So honestly, I can't recommend, attempting to help people where you can, who you think might be having a seizure, where you can as well.
Awesome. That was so good. Thank you so much for joining me and teaching us all about epilepsy and how we can, as a society, break the stigma, and just being cool is being weird, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I agree wholeheartedly.
Being different is way better than being normal. So thank you for teaching us that, and awesome.
No worries, Vanessa. Again, thanks for letting me be here today to talk to you about epilepsy.